Wait. Before you click off of this episode, hear us out. I promise. This is not us hiring Jimbo Fisher, but it's the bye week, Michael. So we decided to have a little bit of fun with a topic that's been tearing up social media for the past couple of days. Is a retread of Jimbo Fisher what Florida State needs right now to get it out of its current position? Or is that kind of something that you're just not going to touch, right? We're going to go through that. We're going to talk about the possibility of Mike Norvell returning in 2026. We're also going to go through some hot board names in case he doesn't, because once we got the news, there was really no point in going through the hot boards when he wasn't going to get fired. But we did a lot of work into it. And in case he does still get fired, because you can take that message that they put out kind of in mixed ways. Either we're going to see how the season plays out, or we're just going to fire him in a few weeks. So we're going to kind of go through some names, kind of all scenarios tied to Florida State's head coaching position. So lots to talk about today. I had to give you the pre-warning there because I know some of you guys are just going to come here with your knives out with Jimbo's name being mentioned. And so just hear us out. We're going to make both sides of the argument. So Michael, just kind of a fun one today. Excited to jump into this one, a bye week. Hey, look, Florida State can't spoil a Saturday for us coming up this weekend. So we're going to talk about something a little off the cuff today. So excited about it, man. But before we do that, how are you? And happy to have you joining me for another one.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, listen, it's a bye week. Florida State is I want to say we're undefeated in the bye week. I don't think we lost a game in the bye
I
week
don't know. It
under
feels like we lost this bye week, though, already.
Exactly. But yeah, just getting into this conversation, it's been all over the internet right now, social media. Everybody's talking about this idea about, who should be the next head coach at Florida State and whether we should bring back also ran and Jimbo Fisher. And so interested to see your take on it, and I'm sure you'll disagree with my take.
Yeah, I'm sure. I think we stand on two different sides of the fence when it comes to Jimbo.
Yeah.
But let's start somewhere else before we get into the Jimbo talk. Let's start with the scenario of maybe
The
he doesn't
doomsday
get fired.
scenario.
Right. Maybe he just comes back. First off, I will say just a couple of quick updates. There was no word on Tommy Castellano's status this week in the updates, which is something that we were kind of hoping to hear. So I hope he's healthy enough to go for the Wake Forest game. That was a pretty brutal hit that he took there with I'm imagining he at a minimum had a concussion out of that. So we're just praying for a smooth recovery for him and hoping that he's okay. Also, man, these interviews sounded odd, right? Just kind of the tone, right? And I think first off, I want to start with Gus Malzahn. Everyone just says if we fire Mike Norvell right now, make Gus Malzahn the interim and, wash your hands. Nice and easy, smooth transition. We're done. You got a guy who's been hit. I don't think Gus Malzahn wants the interim job, period.
Yeah.
I don't think he does. He left UCF because he didn't want to be a head coach. He came here because he didn't have to be a head coach. He said he had contemplated retiring. They were asking him some questions, and he's like, I'm here to work on the offense.
Yeah.
I don't care about anything else. That's not my problem. You talk to Mike about that. I don't think he wants the interim job.
Yeah.
And I think that might be part of why they're sticking with Mike at least till the end of the season. Maybe that was a conversation that was had. Yeah. And he said, no. I mean, you still have Zach Arnett on the staff, too, who was a former head coach who could certainly do that. Right. Tony could do that as well. But, you could avoid giving your coordinator extra responsibilities that way if you just did Arnett. But I don't think he wants it. And so then you see Mike's interview, and man, that was such a strange interview. Like Mike is, we heard back in the day, and we'll talk about this later on, but we heard back in the day that when things had started to go a little bit south for Jimbo Fisher, right, that he was basically living at the facility trying to figure out what's going wrong. And I think you're seeing that out of Mike right now. Like he looks like a unshaven guy that's been on the 3-day bender or something like that. And I'm sure I'm not saying Mike's drinking, but I'm saying I'm sure he's living at that facility. He just, he wears his emotions kind of on his sleeve. And it just was a weird interview, man, with just kind of the body language and stuff like that. And so, man, that's what I talk about when I say, I think he's so far into the mess that I don't know that he's going to be able to find a way out. I mean, I think he's just searching and clawing and grabbing at every straw that he can to try and turn over to try and figure this out. And I think right now it's like you're trying to put out the fire on the carpet in front of you and the entire house is on fire behind you. And so It's like, I just think he's struggling to figure it out. But when that statement came out, I think that kind of told you one of two things, right? And I'll let you give some thoughts on this. I think that either means that we got some things we need to figure out, and then we'll figure this out first. Like maybe restructuring of the athletic department. Maybe they want to go a different way in how they operate things. Maybe Michael Alford's not going to be the one to make that decision if they bring in a GM type of person. It was also brought to my attention the other day that this is probably maybe no coincidence that the Oklahoma athletic director job is going to be coming open after this year. And that is also where Michael Alford started his career at. So maybe Michael Alford is not even going to be here after this year if he were to take that job. And so that could be something to watch as well. Or it could have meant that, like, man, right now we're going to give you the best chance to try and win games throughout the rest of the year. And that's probably by having a head coach than not, when that head coach doesn't even call plays. So nothing would realistically change if you did fire him right now, other than you would get an early search on the next head coach. And so I think part of that, if you look at it with maybe we're just not firing him yet because we don't have all our ducks in a row to do that, that could be one way to look at it. Or it could also be we're going to give him a chance at the end of the year. We're going to let these coordinator hires play out. We're going to see how he can do, because we were talking about it before the show. And I think if he were to get to 8-4, and I don't think either one of us thinks that happens, if he were to get into 8-4, I don't think they would fire him. If he got to 7-5, I don't think they would fire him. I think if he gets to 6-6, I don't know that they fire him, because he would make a bowl game at least. And that was kind of the goal this year. I think anything 5-7 or below, I really do think they have to question what they're doing and whether they need to fire him or not. But man, there is the reality that I don't love to acknowledge, that he might be here next year for 2026. And part of that might be like, hey, man, I know that schedule next year is daunting. You have to start at Alabama. You have a lot of tough games on that schedule. Maybe we don't want our brand new head coach to inherit the roster that we know doesn't really have a lot of star level talent to go up against that schedule and go, 7-5 or 8-4 or something like that. Maybe they want to let Mike have another year or something like that. Because again, man, when you talk about the difference between 8-4 and 7-5 and even 6-6, I don't know that 60 something million, 70, $80 million when you turn over the whole coaching staff. And again, you don't have to pay all that up front, but I don't know that that's worth 1 or 2 wins. And so I think we do have to understand the reality that he might be back, and you might just get another year of these coordinators and to see how things go and to let them recruit and things like that. So I think that's scenario number one, man, is there is the possibility that Mike could be back for 2026.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think the days after the statement that put out, where they're going to do a comprehensive evaluation at the end of the season, I think that was them signaling, hey, we walked into this year, just as we did here at Plant the Spear, just as other media outlets did, saying, at minimum, this program needed to win 8 games for Mike to be safe, right? What jettisoned the desire to jettison Mike Norvell wasn't the loss to Virginia. It wasn't the loss to Pitt, even though that was bad. It wasn't the loss to Miami, even though that was frustrating. It was the loss to Stanford, right? Stanford was the game that really jettisoned this thing to say, okay, he should be done now, right?
Yeah.
But the administration didn't feel that way. And I think they are still on the mindset, just based on what we read in that statement, based on the assumption, they are still on the mindset that we have to let this play out. We have to see how this gets to the end of the season. And if he can get to the end of the season, and let's say he wins out, let's say he wins all, the rest of his games, all 5 of the games that are left, I would agree with you. I think they're going to say, this is what we wanted. We didn't want to lose to Stanford, but look, he won 8 games. Like, we're ready to go in the next season. I think if they win 4 out of the next 5 and they're at 7-5, I think they're saying, well, I mean, look, they're bowl eligible, right? They weren't bowl eligible more. He took a 2-win season and turned it into a 7-win season. It's improvement by 5 games. If they get to 6-6, still bowl eligible. I don't think they're happy about it, but I think they're bowl eligible. So I think in any of those scenarios, I think there is a chance that Mike Norvell might be back. Now, I said in our last episode that I thought regardless of what happens, he was gone at the end of the season. And I'm still holding to that. I still believe that regardless of what happens, they could win out. And I think that they're trying to figure out how to get this all together. Like you talked about, who's making the decision, if Alford's here or not, or they get a GM, all those different things that are getting in. Also, yes, While it may not be the full $100 million that you have to do, we talked about this on the last episode. You're looking at $45 to $57 million that you do have to pay up front this year if you fire this coaching staff, to bring in a new coaching staff, all those things. That's a lot of money to do that, right? And so I do think that they're holding out and waiting to the end of the year to try to figure this out, because they're hoping that he can turn this around. And then I just want to quickly, and I'll throw it back to you, is going back to what you said about how the meeting looked with Mike Norvell when he's doing his press conference. After that Stanford loss, I watched the entire post game of that, and he just looked resigned. Like he just knew. He knew. He was like, "Yeah, I'm going to be fired." Like it was that he looked that bad. And then I think Tuesday, honestly, I got the look of shocked. I thought he looked shocked. Like
a man who had a near-death experience but didn't die.
Exactly. It's like that meme where you come out, you're like we're still here. Like, hey, I think he just did not expect to be here. And I think because of the hard worker and the person he is, he probably slept at that facility and he's just been trying to figure out how can he turn this around. And again, I mean, I don't know if he can. I don't think he can, but I did recognize that, man. He looks like he's, again, we talked about this last time, that spiral that he just can't see his way out of. But I just don't know if this administration is ready to move right now.
Yeah, it's funny when you talk about the one game aspect, right? Like how wild is it that one game, and I say this, one game in two different subsets changed the season. Like the Alabama game changed everything.
Oh my God.
Like I almost, I hate to say
alive.
this, right? I hate to say this, but I almost bet if Mike Norvell said, like, if a magic genie popped up right now and said, "I will trade you a Stanford win for an Alabama loss," I bet he would probably almost take it, because it set unreal expectations. And then the Stanford loss was, to me, the second worst. That's almost the equivalent of losing to Jacksonville State. It's just you did it in year 6, and so it just looks terrible on that front. So yeah, it's wild how the one game on both ends, one win and one loss, really changed the season. Now, you guys know I was ready to fire him in the third quarter of the Miami game, so that's neither here nor there. But I do think there is, like you said, man, I do think he's going to probably end up not being the coach next year, because I think they know they just have to get, this is a big move. This is a huge move. And I think the execution of the move is way more important than the timing of the move. And so I think they need to focus on getting it right, not getting it done.
Right.
And because I've said this before, man, I think the next hire that you get, with, if you're paying this much to buy him out through 2030, you're stuck with whoever you hire the next 5 to 6 years, because you can't afford to have double buyouts and another coach on the books. You can't. So you're going to be stuck with whoever that is. So you better make sure you come correctly when you make this move, or else you're going to be in trouble. You could you talk about burying the athletic department with Mike Norvell's contract. Let it be another buyout that you have to do. So yeah, I think, and I do think it's, again, we talk about last episode where you have to come at this from the business side versus the fan side of things. And I think from the business side, who does want to pay 50, 60, 70 million dollars to pay a coach to go away and not coach? Like, no one wants to do that. So I'm sure the athletic department, if at all possible, wants to avoid footing that bill regardless. And so I think they want to try and give him the rest of the year to at least figure it out. And I think if it can look good enough, I think they will bring him back. Now, that, again, is not our choice. That's not what we're saying. We're looking at this from what they could do, or what they more likely would do than not. And, you talked about, even if they went out, I don't know that that's the place, because, again, you're talking about beating Wake Forest coming off a bye, the worst Clemson team in 15 years that may or may not even be without Cade Klubnik, because he didn't play versus SMU because he's been injured. Then you got a Virginia Tech team who got blown out by Old Dominion and is under interim staff. You got NC State, who lost to that Virginia Tech team. Then you got Florida, who's going to be under interim staff, probably 3 to 4 wins. So to me, none of those wins would necessarily move the needle. Now, I think if you looked good in those wins, you could maybe justify bringing him back, right? But if you go get smoked by a bad Clemson team and a bad Florida team on the road, and then, you beat Virginia Tech by 3, that's not good enough, man, because at the end of the day, like, the thing for me is, it's not necessarily the win-loss record as a whole, because it is, but it's more about how it looks, and the fact that you have regressed every single week since after basically Kent State. You have regressed every single week, and it just looks worse than it did in the first 3 weeks of the season, which is the opposite of how it should be. So to me, that's why I don't think they should bring them back, because you are getting progressively worse.
Yep.
And 13 points against Stanford's defense when San Jose State just put up 29 on them that's terrible. So, I mean, it's been mostly the defense, but now we've seen some offensive warts too.
Right.
So, again, we'll see how this plays out. I still think they're trying to find a way to not bring him back unless he wins enough games to be like, ooh, boy, that was close. We almost had to write that check.
Yeah.
And maybe they just, we're going to sign the check and then we're just going to stick it in this drawer and we'll see what happens at the end of the season. So I don't know, man, that's kind of where I'm at, but let's assume that maybe he doesn't come back. Right. So let's talk about some of the options that we have here. And this is where we get into the Jimbo talk, which I know is probably what most of you guys came for. We're also going to drop some hot board names and things like that. Michael, again, like I said, man, you can't miss on this next hire, but you know who never misses? And that is our sponsor, Alumni Hall FSU. Look, guys, I know the team's not great, but we're never going to stop repping the Noles. And you probably aren't either. So make sure you get some good FSU gear from Alumni Hall FSU. Look, your lucky hat and your lucky shirt, I got news for you. It ain't working. So it's time to try something different. Let's switch these out. I'm not saying the losses are on you. I'm just saying if you don't change before Saturday and we lose, I'm not saying it's not on you. So check those guys out, 1415 Timberlane Road in Tallahassee, or you can shop online at alumnihall.com. Navigate over to the FSU page and make sure you save 10% with code SPEAR. You can use that online or in store. Again, they got great stuff. So we appreciate you guys supporting those that support us. And we appreciate Alumni Hall for sponsoring this episode. So again, save 10% with code SPEAR. So Michael, if we do rip this Band-Aid off and we have to go with a new coach for 2026, who could Florida State realistically put in that position? And that's where the discussion gets a little bit fun. Now, for me, let's just set the stage, right? I think the way I approach this, and everyone may be different, but the way I approach this next hire is Florida State wants to bring in somebody who's going to have immediate success, a Kurt Signetti, going to put you in the playoffs year one. You look like a national title contender year two. I think that's what you want. That's what you always hope for in any coaching hire. But I think right now what Florida State needs more than anything is to have a consistent winner. You cannot have somebody come in and go 3-9, 4-8, 5-7, something like that over the next 2 or 3 years to the point where, now granted, whoever you bring in, I think needs to set early expectations, right? Like, this is going to take a couple years to unwind all the damage that's been done, and then we'll figure it out from there. But, if you're in year 3, year 4, and you're still having losing seasons and you're talking about firing them, I think that's the absolute worst case scenario because you're still not out from under Mike Norvell's buyout yet. So I do think you need a little bit of a stability hire with the most possible upside possible that's affordable. I also think you have to keep in mind where you're at when you're making this hire. Like, I need someone to go in and win me 9 to 10 games in the ACC. That is very doable. And so to me, and I'll let you share some thoughts if you think it's any different, but I think that is where Florida State needs to be thinking in their next hire is we got 5 years. We got to make sure we don't miss on this one.
Yeah, I get you got 5 years coming up, before the big realignment, supposedly could take place with the Big
and
Ten
with the buyout
and the buyout being off the thing. Here's my thing. We have, in my mind, we have lowered the standard of Florida State University as fans. Not as fans, but we've lowered the standard when we're saying we just need a coach to come in and just win us some ACC games, right? Because we haven't won one in God knows how long, since Mike was 42.
Over a calendar year.
Over a calendar year, we haven't won an ACC game. And so for me, I think what Florida State should be thinking about is who can come in and dominate this conference. That's what they should be thinking about. Who can come in and dominate this conference? Now, the names that automatically come to play, you might not be able to afford right now,
right?
Because of the buyout and all like that stuff. But that shouldn't stop you from thinking about, okay, if we can't afford those names, who then of the up and comers gives us the best chance to get close to dominating this conference? That should always be the MO. You are in the most talent-rich state for football in the country. Florida State literally recruits itself if you have a competent recruiter leading the helm, right? Now, you may not have as much money or long jump. Like I did this research because this is key to this. because part of all this is the money that's flowing into the school, Jesse, right. And so some of these schools have donor bases from hundreds of years of being around, like, just for example, Stanford, who didn't whoop us but beat us, they have a $37.6 billion endowment. Okay.
Yeah, one of the biggest
Right,
in the country.
one of the biggest in the
I think
country.
outside of Harvard.
University of Florida, down the road from us, $2.38 billion. Miami, $1.39 billion. Ohio State, $8.6 billion. Clemson, a little over $1 billion. You know where Florida State's at? $869 million. Okay. We have always done more with less. So you've got to find a coach who you can believe can come in, and now you have the pristine facilities. You have NIL that's in the top 15, right? You're going to have a top 10 assistance budget. You're going to have a top 10 auxiliary staff budget. You're going to have the best of the best, but you're going to be working with a lesser donor base. And you've got to be able to find a coach that can come in and see that as a great challenge and still has the high potential of dominating this conference.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I will say a lot of the numbers that you talk about are still in the upper echelon of the ACC, right?
Yep.
You have the resources here. Like, it might be hard to compete year in and year out nationally when you talk about the Georgias, the Ohio States, and all that, to have all that money. But to me, the resources that you have should allow you to be top 3 in the ACC year in and year out. But you're right. I mean, you have to do more with less. I mean, you got to look at the financial picture that Florida State has. So this is where the Jimbo Fisher conversation comes into play, right? Could you retread Jimbo and bring him back to Florida State and this actually work, right?
Yeah.
Because I think where we start with the Jimbo conversation is the only way, and we both feel this way. We both feel differently about whether it would happen or not, but the only way you give Jimbo 2.0 another chance is if he cuts you an unbelievably sweetheart contract with Florida State. Like, he would have to come back, in my opinion, for, let's say, 4 to 5 years, to basically the extent of Mike's buyout, right? Give him the 5 years. He's going to have to accept somewhere less than 5,000 or 5,000 be great, less than 5 million per year. And he's going to have to basically give you we'll pay you out the end of the season buyout if this doesn't work, right? You cannot be on the hook for another big buyout with another coach. And so I think if he gave you a sweetheart contract, I think the conversation is worth being had. Now I think you have to put all the things on the table, which is what we're going to do right now, and why you would or why you wouldn't bring him back. And let's first start where you guys stand, right? I did a poll on social media not long ago, and it had almost 4,000 responses. And it was a different context than what we're talking now. It was, if Jimbo offered to pay Mike Norvell's buyout, basically, would you take an even swap if it meant getting out of Mike Norvell to bring Jimbo back and it didn't cost you $1 to do it? Well, that's not the exact context that we're talking today, but we are talking about Jimbo taking a sweetheart contract to help afford you to move out from under Mike Norvell. 71% of you chose Jimbo over Mike Norvell with almost 4,000 votes. So before you think it's just us up here saying things, we asked you guys too. And so that's where the general consensus stands. So I think let's start with Jimbo's time at Florida State, right? I think when you go through, Jimbo won a lot of games here. And so I think it's easy to think he can come back and he can be Jimbo 2.0 and rekindle things and get this old train, get the band back together and things like that. But I think a lot of people also throw up the red flag of what happened at Texas A&M. And I think that's a very fair conversation to have. But when you talk about some of the things here, like, I would also like to see Jimbo under the current administration, because Stan Wilcox was just not a great AD during the time of what Jimbo was trying to get done, right? He didn't really want to open up the checkbook. They were trying to fix some finances and things like that. He didn't really want to give them the facilities and things that Jimbo was talking about. And so I definitely think you can put part of the divorce on the administration that was here at the time. Part of the divorce goes on to, and that's the divorce between Florida State and Jimbo Fisher. His personal life and the things that were going on with his former wife and all that type of stuff. And so I think there's a lot with Monk's passing. I think that was a big part of it that kind of helped them not. He didn't really like the way the boosters were organized back then, and they since fixed that. They've since fixed the facility issues. They've since fixed. He's since fixed his personal life a little bit too. So I'm saying all this to say, when we get into if we start with the negative part, the divorce part of why you wouldn't want to bring him back, that is clearly the main thing, right? That and the tenure at Texas A&M. And so for me, Michael, I think when you talk about that side of it, I think I look at it as it's a different administration, and his personal life has a lot of that stuff cleaned up. So would he be more focused on the job at hand with a better administration behind him? Yes, I do think so. I still think some of the people that blame Jimbo for Florida State's problems 10 years later are misguided, because you've had long enough to recover from those problems. So I don't think you can really blame him anymore. But yes, it does deserve to be held against him till the end of time, the way he left this program, the way he flirted with LSU the couple years that he did, which we all know he wanted LSU because he won his title there with Saban. I think that was where he was at. And at the time, it was a better program than Florida State, right? Because they had the facilities. They had a lot of those things. And so it was in the SEC where I think he ultimately wanted to be, because of Nick Saban and because Kirby and because of everything. You know, all his buddies were in the SEC. Right. He was kind of the only one left in the ACC. So, you know, again, I think that type of stuff should be held against him to the end of time. And I honestly think that's probably about 80% of the reason why they won't bring him back here, even if we thought it was a good idea, because I think there are some people that are still in the administration and the boosters and all that stuff that there's no way they would have Jimbo Fisher 2.0 come back to this program. And so I think all of that stuff is there. And I think that is a wound that will maybe never heal, right? But for me, it's at least scabbed over. And I can look at it as, man, things just kind of went sideways in his personal life, you know. And honestly, dude, when you're not getting the facilities that you want, and Texas A&M it comes calling, and they have all the facilities, they give you a $75 million guaranteed contract, they offer to pay for Ethan's health care, you know, basically for life, like, and you had a crap personal life here, there was absolutely no reason for him not to leave at the time, right? Things were starting to kind of come off the track. So I don't blame him for leaving. I just hate how he did it, right? And so, you know, I will say this. I'll probably defend Jimbo a little bit more than Michael will in this episode, because Jimbo was my guy back in the day. Because of him, I got to see us win a national championship with my eyes in person in Pasadena. So I will always hold a soft spot for Jimbo for that, right? At a minimum. But at the same time, I also will always hold against him the way he ended his tenure here, because I do think that's what put us behind for Willie and then eventually into Mike and things like that. So I'll always hold him against that. But I can also look past some of the stuff that happened 10 years ago too.
Yeah, like, listen, and I'm not the type of person that's like, I'm not on the extremes of the Jimbo conversation. Like, I don't,
which is where I feel like a lot of our fan base is. You either love him or you hate him. Period.
Exactly. You either love him or you despise him. I'm actually right in the middle, because that's just how I live my life. Honestly, there's very few people in this world that I'm like, oh, I'm out on them. But Jimbo has always been the guy that, again, like you said, like, man, I was there in Pasadena. Like, him leading that team to that game and winning that game, man, I'll never forget that. Like, I appreciate that from Jimbo Fisher. I appreciate coming out of the lost decade that that first season. I remember it was so cathartic that it just felt like this was something. It was a breath of fresh air to win again, to win big again, to beat South Carolina and get that 10 win. And, you know, I remember all that. I remember the 29 straight victories that he brought Florida State, the top 10, top 5, sometimes top 1 or 2, depending where you look at recruiting classes, right? I remember, man, that was awesome. At the same time, I also remember some of the vitriolness that he left Florida State with, right? I mean, he burned almost every bridge on purpose that he could burn leaving this place. And let's not even forget that in 2025, or I'm sorry, in 2015 and 2016, he flirted deeply with LSU. Let's not forget that every year since he was the head coach of Florida State, he asked for more facilities, more money, payroll, or I'm sorry, not payroll, salary. He got an increase almost every single year to his contract, because he kept dangling in front of Florida State that he could potentially leave. I get that he was trying to get more for himself. He was trying to earn the respect of all those different things. I get that. But let's not also forget what was those, the promissory notes. Let's also
Yeah.
not forget the fact that outside of Jameis Winston and EJ Manuel, because Christian Ponder was already on when he came on as an offensive coordinator. Outside of that, he had a terrible run of quarterbacks, where either they were being really weird and doing weird things and got dismissed from the team, or they were, they didn't pan out very well. You had James Blackman, who had to step in for DeAndre Francois when he got injured. Like, why didn't we have a backup there? You lost Croker to Alabama, who ends up winning a national title a year later or so. Like, so there's all those things. There was the toxicity that was happening around the program towards the end of the season there. Yes. And Jesse knows that in my my non plant the spirit life, I am a pastor. And so like walking with people through some of life's most difficult things, it has a huge effect on their life. And you could totally see that happening, Jimbo, when he's dealing with his divorce and all of those things. So you'll never catch me making light of that stuff. That stuff was real. At the end of it, he did need to go. We all agree he needed to go. The way he went was the worst way you could possibly leave a program, right? But then, Jesse, he got his life together. He got married again. Ethan, is doing better. The healthcare was that. He got every resource you'd want. He got all the facilities you'd want. He got all the money you'd want. He was able to recruit the best kids. Now, I think the thing that's unfair that people hold against him is that number one recruiting class he got at Texas A&M. He didn't have time to let that thing pan out. So, like, you can't say, oh, well, he got the best recruiting class and he failed. No, that thing takes about 2 to 3 years before you actually start seeing fruits from that. But he still had really good players from the previous recruiting class. And his best class, his best season was his COVID season. And he got left out of whatever the playoff was looking like back then. That was his best. Outside of that, he didn't do like great. It wasn't bad, except for obviously the last couple seasons, but it wasn't great either. It wasn't like he was blowing people out or winning big games or making a huge difference. I mean, it was constantly, what is wrong with this offense? It's slow, it's archaic, it's not moving. He was fortunate to have Mike Elko as his defensive coordinator, or they get blown out of those games. I mean, it was just it was in my mind, it was an utter failure at Texas A&M, which is why they were willing to pay $75 million for him not to coach. But again, you see these two things and you're like, gosh, he did so well here prior to whatever that line you want to draw where it got worse at Florida State. But then he did so bad afterwards. And so you're just kind of in this juxtaposition of like, I don't know if him coming back would be a thing. And then I'll throw this back to you on this question I asked you in the pre-show is like, name me a head coach that got fired from a Power 4 program, left, and then went back to another Power 4 program and had success. And there's maybe two that you could say.
Yeah. I think we came up with Ed Orgeron and Lane Kiffin.
That's right.
And there wasn't a whole lot of really hard thinking going into that.
Yeah.
But I will say this, and I want to back this up a little bit. We were going to talk about Texas A&M here in a minute, but I want to back this up a little bit. I think one thing I want to address too in 2013 is just a couple of narratives about that team that I've heard so far. That he had nothing to do with that team. Those are Bobby's recruits. That is not
true.
That is not even remotely true. Jameis was 100% a Jimbo recruit. He was a redshirt freshman. He was here, and that's no diss to Bobby. But recruiting and if you follow the recruiting and the NFL draft pick levels, when Jimbo took over, they went through the roof. So that is not even remotely true there. And then I also want to say that, like, man, one of the things when you look back to Jimbo's time at Florida State is he also competed in the same division back when we had divisions as a rising Clemson power. Like during his time here, they won a national championship. How many times did they probably get locked out of an ACC championship opportunity because we were in divisions and you were behind them? So I just at least want to say that to when people look at the further down the road, like Clemson won a national championship in 2016. I think it was 15 or 16. I think it was 16. They won in 16. So, like, you're also competing against a power in your own division that could lock you out of a chance to go play in Charlotte. You don't have that anymore. Like, that is something that has changed since he left and came back. And I do think there is something to, like, I think he's better off personally. I think it was good for him to take a year or two off just out of coaching. They have recently come out with the article that says he still watches film, he still breaks it down, he's still trying to learn the modern game and stuff like that. So there is that. And I understand that the game has changed a lot since he left, right? NIL, the portal, and all that stuff. So it was here towards the end of his tenure.
But not in the facet that it is now.
But not in the facet that it is now. I also will say, when you talk about his time at Texas A&M, he competed in the SEC West when the SEC West was the SEC West. You had Nick Saban's Alabama in there. You had LSU when they won a title in there. He also played Clemson his first 2 seasons there, and that Clemson team that he faced those 2 years in a row were 29-1, played for national title and lost in a national title. He had an insanely hard schedule at A&M, which I think a lot of people overlook. Now, there were some things, and I'll get into a little bit more than that later on, but I think there are just some things that people overlook, right, with the Texas A&M tenure. Now, he was brought there to be able to put them in that conversation, and he did not. So I'm not saying that he was good at Texas A&M. He was not. But, man, I just look back to, like, from 2012 to 2014, we went 2 calendar years without losing a single game. It has been more than a calendar year since we've won an ACC game. That is just like, that's hard. That's all. It makes you romanticize the past, right? At least a little bit. I mean, he won 7 straight versus Miami, 7 of 8 versus Florida. He had 3 ACC titles, 2 undefeated regular seasons, a national championship, a playoff berth, 6 10-win seasons. Again, all while battling that Clemson power in the same division. A couple other things that I want to touch on. People have said that he can't win without Jameis Winston as his quarterback. Well, he's 57-22 without Jameis, also counting the SMAG game versus Clemson in 14. So he can win without him, right? Mike is 7-22 without Jordan Travis. If you want to talk about someone who can't win without a quarterback, well, you got your example right there. And that can go for a lot of coaches, right? Gene Chizik won a national championship with Cam Newton, got fired for going 3-9 2 years later. LSU without Joe Burrow, Coach O gets fired. That could be Tim Tebow. A lot of coaches can't survive without that one generational quarterback. I think 57-22 is a lot better than 7-22. So if you're going to make
at Florida State,
that's all at Florida State without him. So, because I think people look at 15, 16, and 17. 17 was bad. I think people do look at 15 and 16 and make it a little bit worse than what it was, in my personal opinion, right? Because you look at 2015, 10-3, made a New Year's Six bowl. And that's also coming off a stretch of 13-14 where you had to replace a Heisman winner at quarterback. You had to replace a ton of talent. We know all 22 of those starters in 2013 ended up being draft picks. So you're having to replace a ton of talent. And then you look at their 3 losses. They lost on a blocked field goal to Georgia Tech, which was kind of a freak play. Now, Georgia Tech was 3-9 that year. You should have never been in that position, but they were kicking a field goal to win the game. You make the field goal and you win the game. It doesn't count now. I get that. It goes against them, but it's not like they got blown out, right? You had a 10-point loss at Clemson, who went 14-1 that year and lost in the national championship game.
That was the chop block game. Yeah.
No, that was actually 16.
That was 16.
Okay. We're getting to that part. And you also started SMAG in that game because Everett Golson had a concussion from the Georgia Tech game. So you had a 10-point loss against the national champion on the road with a backup quarterback. Then you look, we just lost by 7 on the road with a backup quarterback to 2-4 Stanford. Okay. So that doesn't sound quite as bad. And then you lost to a 13-1 Houston team when you had Sean McGuire, who was hurt in that game, and you had JJ Cosentino, who didn't know which way to hand the ball off. Worst quarterback I've seen in FSU history, right? So to me, 2015 is he was worse than he made DJU look like a Heisman contender. I think 2015 wasn't as bad as people made it out to be, right? Just me personally. Now, 2016, I think there's some. That one wasn't too good, right? 2016, also 10-3. They did win the Orange Bowl that year, so they won a New Year's Six bowl. They lost 63-20 to Louisville. That was a bad loss. That's when you really started to see things were kind of coming unraveled under Jimbo Fisher. But people also forget, who was the quarterback of Louisville that year? The Heisman-winning Lamar Jackson. That dude could make anybody look stupid. Then he lost by 2 points to UNC, who was 8-5, had Mitch Trubisky. Not a terrible team, not a good team. And then he lost by 3 points to Clemson, who won the national championship that year. That was the chop block year. Had you not had a BS call right there, you beat who eventually went on to win the national championship, right? And who knows where you end up if you win that game. And then, of course, 2017 was terrible. 5-6 on the year. Did not coach the final 2 games, but he would have coached against UL Monroe and Southern Miss. I'm going to go ahead and assume he would have finished the season 7-6, so he would have never had a losing season. But again, man, loss number 1 was to number 1 Alabama. You already had, the BS missed PI call on the goal line that should have been a touchdown that changes the momentum of the game. You also had Francois get hurt in that game, so maybe you just take an L there. Well, then you lose the next week by 6 points at NC State without your quarterback. Then you lose to Miami, who was 10-3 that year. That was a one good season that they had in 2017. Then they lose 31-28 again to Lamar Jackson in Louisville, who was only 8-5 that year. So you had some bad losses, right? But it's not like he was getting blown out like we did. What was it, 52-3 against Notre Dame last year under Mike? What was it, 52-10 against Miami year 1? I don't count that against him.
Yeah.
And then the 31-14 loss to Clemson, who was 12-2. Now, the 35-3 Boston College loss was the one that you were like, what the heck are we doing? And we got promise notes and stuff coming out after that. But I think when you talk about his tenure as a whole at Florida State, and I want to kind of put a bow on this, and then we'll talk about Texas A&M. 2017 was bad, right? And that's when he was checked out after the Alabama game. He was basically already accepting other job offers and things like that. He quit recruiting and all that. But man, the years before that, that was not bad. Like, I think all of us right now would probably kill to be 10-3 and in the Orange Bowl, like we did in 15 and 16. So I don't think the end of his tenure at Florida State outside of 2017 was not as bad as I think some people make it out to be. But we'll put a bow on that. I'll throw it back to you for some thoughts on that, and then we'll talk about Texas A&M.
Yeah, you're not wrong. Like we would kill to be 10-3 and back-to-back seasons at Florida State. Like
those are probably playoff seasons nowadays.
Those are probably playoff seasons in this day and age. You're absolutely right about that. I think the thing that gets missed though, and I think the reason why there are people out there who might see that season just a little bit differently is because the cracks had already started to show. Like the things that were beginning to be that will be toxic in 2017 were starting to show already in 2015 and 2016. And then obviously it took one catalytic moment of Francois getting hurt, then everything just flowed out. But you started seeing driplets of that, in 2015 and 2016 of that. And I think that's I think you have to consider that when you talk about Jimbo, is that, yeah, the record is nice for sure, 10-3, all those things. But the toxicity of what was happening in that program were already starting to seep out there too as well. And so again, I would take 10-3 right now. And I think the thing is too, like when you talk about like, oh, he went, he went 2 calendar years without losing a game. Well, Mike almost went 2 calendar years without losing a game as well too, right? Mike went 19-0 at one point. He went 23-4 over 2 calendar seasons, and we thought he was the next coming of Jimbo Fisher, Bobby Bowden again, right? So it's like every coach can potentially have their moment in the sun. The problem is that Jimbo's mid-low is much higher than Mike's low, right?
Right.
That's the difference, is that when Jimbo was, let's just take 2017, put it to the side because there's a lot of confluence of that. But 2010, 2011, 2015, and 2016, those are low in Jimbo's mind. Whereas a low with Mike Norvell is 3-6 and 5-7 and 2-10 and now 3-4, right? So like I think that's where people are like, oh man, like Jimbo's so much better. For sure he was, because when it was bad, it was still pretty good. Whereas
still
with
9
Mike,
wins. Yeah.
When it was bad, it's been bad.
Yeah, no, it's been awful, right? And I think you're right. I think the problem with Jimbo is there were some off the field issues. There were some things that, some later in his tenure, some staff changes that he made that were missteps
or didn't
I
make.
think, right. And that, I think that's the thing that it eventually came unwound, right? You saw everything come unwound in 2017. Now, there are some things where, like, maybe Jeremy Pruitt doesn't do some of the things that were rumored that he did, and maybe he stays, and maybe you win another back-to-back championship in 2014, because even the players have said if they had Pruitt in 2014, they wholeheartedly believe they would have won a national championship. Again, I mean, they made it to the playoffs, and that game was closer than people think. It was like a one-score game in the third quarter before things came unwound. Right, and so you could have went back-to-back there, and then who knows what happens. But that, again, I'm not saying Jimbo's free of fault, right? He did a lot of bad things at this program, but it's just, even through the bad, a bad year was 9 wins, right?
Yeah.
And again, what we're looking for right now is a 9-win floor with a 14-win or however many it takes to win now, 15, 16-win ceiling, right? The problem with Mike has been it could have been a 16-win ceiling because I would love to see, or 15, I guess, in the 4-team playoff. You just can't have a 2 and 3-win floor, man. And it's been like that almost more often than not. And so when we talk about his time at Texas A&M, I will say this, man, it was not good out there at Texas A&M. But the only thing I want to say about that is he had a tough time out there, right? He had 27 total losses at Texas A&M. 17 of them were against ranked teams. 7 of them were against top 5 teams. You look at the losses that he had in 2023, they took 6 losses before he got fired. 5 of those were against ranked teams. In 2019, he lost 5 games. All 5 of those losses were against top 5 teams. So, like, he was playing a ridiculous schedule. In 2018, he lost 4 games. 2 of those were against number 1 and number 2. And both of those teams played for a national title that year. So, to me, I go back to, like, when you look at it through his tenure there compared to what Florida State was doing in the meantime, only 1 year did we play more ranked teams than he did out there. And that was 2018. He played 4 total. We played 6 total. Other than that, 2019, he played 6 ranked teams. We played 3. 2020 was 3 and 3. 21, he played 4 ranked teams. We played 1. 2022, he played 5. We played 3. 23, when he got fired, he played 3 and 10 games. We played 4 and 14 games. So my point to that is that, again, keep in mind where he's going to be coaching. He's not going to be coaching in the SEC West. So could he come here and compete in the ACC? That we have seen him do, right? It's just out there, man. That was hard. And again, I'm not excusing the losing that he did because he had everything possible to win. But I also look at Texas A&M and I say, is it the person or the program to a degree? Because when you talk about Texas A&M, they have had 2 double-digit win seasons in the past 31 years. All those resources, all that money hasn't done anything for anybody. Their last conference title was in 1998 when they were in the Big 12. Their last national title was 1939. So again, I also look at it as, man, nobody has won at Texas A&M with all the money in the world. Mike Elko might be that guy. I mean, they're humming right now, but no one has won out there. So sometimes I just think, like, people just look at the Texas A&M on the surface level and say Jimbo didn't do good there. Man, there's been a lot of coaches that had resources and didn't do anything there. So it's not just him as a whole. So, man, again, it wasn't good out there, and the end of Florida State wasn't good. But I guess my whole point in a nutshell would be to, if you look at where he's at personally, and if you look at where Florida State is at in the ACC, do I think he could come here and probably win you games? Yes, I do believe he could come win some games in the ACC. I think he's shown that. I think he could stock the roster with enough talent because, again, you talk about the second to last year before he got fired at A&M, he signed what is considered the best recruiting class in the history of recruiting classes at Texas A&M. Man, if you bring that to Florida State, you're going to win 9 or 10 games a year. And so that's where I think the advantage to hiring Jimbo, I'm not saying he would be the guy, right? I think you need to make sure he has 2 good coordinators, which I do laugh that everyone says, well, Jimbo runs an old, outdated offense. Buddy, we're running an offense that was popular in 2010 right now. We're kind of doing the same outdated thing as well. It's just Jimbo could recruit. And so I think, yes, you do need to make him have a modern offensive coordinator. I think he needs to be a CEO type of head coach if you were to bring him back. But I think he could put enough talent on this roster, and he knows what it looks like to win a national championship. You know, we talked about this with Mike Norvell before. One of the things that I was worried about with him, and I do still die on the hill, I think we probably would have either won or played for a national championship in 2023 had Jordan not got hurt. And then we're probably never having this conversation to begin with. One of the things I thought Gus was going to be good for Mike Norvell is you have a guy that knows what it looks like on the highest level. And I think that's something that at least Jimbo knows. He knows what it takes to win a national championship. And not only has he won a national championship, he did it at your school. And there's not a lot of coaches out there. What is there? 2 coaches, I think, right now that are currently coaching that have won a national championship, Dabo and Ryan Day. And so I do think there is something to that. But I do think he would have to come back in a CEO standpoint And I do think he would have to come back with a sweetheart contract. And I will say this about the contract, and then I'll throw it back to you. I know, like, we have a difference of opinion on this, whether he would take this or not. So I do think this would be the only job, other than maybe LSU. And I don't think LSU would probably hire him because they're in a different spot than we are right now. I think at that point, if he offered you a sweetheart contract, I think he could win games here. I'm not saying he should be your next coach. I'm just saying if he offered you a sweetheart contract and you knew you could not keep Mike Norvell, I think he would at least have to be in the conversation. I know it's going to ruffle some feathers to say that. And, if you did bring him back, but again, when you're looking at who's the best coach you can get for your current situation and your current finances, if he was the one who was willing to bend over backwards for a contract, because look, I want Lane Kiffin too. You're not getting Lane Kiffin for less than $12 million because that's what Florida's offering, close to 13 now. I think given the circumstances, I think his name should at least be in the hat. And again, I think you go to him and you say, Jimbo, listen, it's going to have to be $5 million or less per year. And you're going to have to be on a remaining year buyout type of contract, period. That's the only way it'll happen. And I think he would take that.
Yeah. I disagree with that. Listen, I'm in the business of believing that people can change and people can grow and people can become better than what they previously were. I believe that wholeheartedly. I believe Jimbo Fisher was going through a really difficult season of his lifetime when all that happened at Florida State towards the end there. And I believe he got his life better. I believe those things are absolutely better. The one thing and until I see it, I refuse to believe is that ego of his is out the window, gone. And for a person like Jimbo Fisher to come and take a what would be essentially, according to your sweetheart deal, what would be essentially a brand new head coach deal, I don't see him doing that. I don't see Jimbo taking a deal that says, you know what, Florida State, you only pay me $3 to $5 million and you use everything else for money. No, Jimbo's going to want to command the kind of money that honestly he deserves to command. He should be a $7 million or more head coach. I mean, because he won a national title. He's only one of four current head coaches that are still in the college atmosphere. Maybe not even coaching, but you got Nick Saban. Five. You got Nick Saban, Urban Meyer, Jimbo Fisher. They're in the college atmosphere. And then you got Dabo and you got Ryan Day, who are actually still coaching. Five national coaches that have national championships. Okay. Now you got Ed Orgeron, who could come back. So that makes 6 or whatever. So he deserves to be paid $7+ million. He's not going to, in my mind, and I don't know, but in my mind, you might believe he will. I don't believe he will. I don't think he's coming back for less than that. 1, 2, he's still Jimbo Fisher. He's still the arrogant SOB who wants the things done his way, how he wants them. And yeah, he might be able to come and win you some games in the ACC. Mike Norvell was able to win you some games in the ACC. Like, I don't know if going back to the jilted girlfriend or boyfriend who literally cheated on you all the time and then left you and took all your money, stole your cat, scratched your car up, busted your windows in the house, and then come back several years later and say, please take me back. We're desperate. Please take me back. Like, I don't know if that's the play. I don't think Jimbo Fisher is your best option for the situation that you're in right now. I don't think so. I think he's your break glass in case of emergency, like you said in our pre-show. I think he's that for sure. I think if you got down to it and he was your option left, then yeah, by all means, go for it. But I think there are better options out there for the situation that you're in. And I'll say this, and I said this to you, and I only because we're not connected, but I've heard this through people that I would, in some ways trust. There are still people in this administration who were there when Jimbo jilted and burned the house down. And it's over their dead bodies, almost literally, that they would have him back as the head coach of that football program. And so I just think because of those things, I think it's just it makes the possibility of Jimbo coming back insurmountable. Now, I will be honest, and I will say that I have said to Jesse on here pre-shows before, gosh, what it'd be like to have Jimbo back and winning 10 games a year. Absolutely. I would kill for that. I just, based on everything we've known and seen, I think Florida State should look at other options that will bring in fresh, new perspective in all of that sense before we go to that option of Jimbo Fisher.
Yeah, I agree. Again, I think Jimbo is like the man, the only way we can get rid of Mike is Jimbo taking a sweetheart deal for us to come back. And again, we can differ on that. I do think just for Florida State, I think he would take less money to begin with the buyout. Now, again, once the buyout's over and once his Texas A&M money's gone, he's probably going to want to raise if he was successful. But you can use that kind of like a show me contract, you know? I mean, yeah, I do romanticize a little bit the old peak Jimbo days, right? I mean, I miss that. Like you go watch that like
We all
2013
do.
documentary. Man, hell's coming with us and all that stuff.
Yep,
Like I miss that because hell actually did come with you. You didn't go. You keep climbing and trust your training and go lose to Stanford. Like that didn't happen. We didn't lose to FCS team or FCS teams. We didn't lose to Duke for the first time. You know what I mean? And so I just think if push come to shove and you had to hire somebody to give you a sweetheart contract to get rid of Mike, I think Jimbo could come in here and I think he could stock the roster with enough talent. I think he could hire good enough coaches because he's also hired some pretty good coaches. For all the hires that he didn't hire, I think he's done some good, with Elko and stuff like that. If you could get some of them, then I think you could. But yeah, I think he could win here in the ACC in the context, and I think he would take it to get back here. But like you said, man, I think it's going to be the last option. I think there are better options. The whole conversation was just to be a fun conversation about what could it happen and what would happen if it could. And I think he could be a guy that could come in here and sign you top 10 classes, win you 8, 9, 10, or probably 9, 10 games a year and compete for the playoffs at Florida State against this current ACC, especially if Clemson starts to fall off. Let's do this too, Michael. All right. So here's 2 coaches, right? I'm not going to give you their name. I'm just going to give you the numbers, right? Overall winning percentage. One of these is over 12 years. One of these is over 14 years. And I'm going to hide some numbers to keep you from knowing who is who. Overall winning percentage, 72.7 to 69.8. It's pretty close. Conference winning percentage, 63.4 to 62. That's pretty close. Versus top 10 teams, 41.9% winning percentage, 16% winning percentage. Oof, that's way one-sided. Versus top 25 just ranked in general, 41.7% winning percentage, 33.3% winning percentage. Well, one of these coaches is really sounding a lot better than the other one so far. Versus unranked opponents, 85.6% versus 84.4%. So he's got a little edge there. But in top 25, top 10 overall and conference, Coach B, as we'll say, has a better winning percentage than everything other than unranked opponents, which he leads by 1.2%. Who do you think Coach 1 is?
I don't know. Who is that?
That's James Franklin.
Okay.
Who do you think Coach 2 is?
Who is it?
That's Jimbo Fisher. So if you remove the names and you look at the results, and everybody is in favor of bringing James Franklin here, just about, not everybody, but the majority of people say, let's bring James Franklin to Florida State. Well, you'd be arguing for statistically a worse coach than Jimbo Fisher, and you probably have to pay more for him. And so, again, man, that's all I'm going to say about Jimbo, right? And we won't even get into Mike's numbers because those are terrible.
That's terrible.
But also, Jimbo has out-recruited. I will at least say that too. I mean, when you get down to the numbers, again, you're talking about James Franklin has recruited an average 10-year rank at Penn State. He was averaging 13. He's had 3 top 10 classes, none outside the top 20, and only 1 outside the top 15. Jimbo Fisher has had 7 top 5 classes, 3 number 1 classes, and only 2 outside of the top 10. And one of those was a transition year to A&M. So, man, again, I just think, given the context of playing in the ACC, people say he can't do it in the NIL on the portal era. He signed the best class in the history of ever recruiting the year before he got fired. NIL and the portal were both in place by 2021. So he can still do it. Now you could question the resources that Florida State has versus
I was going to say,
A&M.
because he had bank
right.
at Texas A&M.
But again, I also, if you win, you're going to get more money. So he's not going to have Texas A&M money. That's never going to happen. But you're also not competing against a lot of those big money SEC programs either. You would in the grand scheme of things in the playoffs, but we can't even get there. And so I think with him, he could get us there. And then you'd have to answer that question at that point. But that's it for Jimbo for me. I don't know if you have any final thoughts. Again, I think we can both agree that he is not your number 1 option. He is not your number 2 or 3 option. But I think if he is the only option that can make sense financially, and he is willing to meet you in the middle on that contract, I think he is an option.
Yeah. Yeah, I would just say this. Again, at the end of the day, if if you get down the options list and you find yourself in my mind, at the Jimbo Fisher option, listen, if he becomes the head coach of Florida State, I am going to throw 100% weight behind him again. Like, because I'm going to support whoever is the head coach of Florida State University. Point blank, period. Now, my desire would be is that you've exhausted
Yeah.
whatever list you have before you get to Jimbo again. And then again, that Jimbo gives you this sweetheart deal. Like that, in my mind, that's the only way I can.
That's the crux of it.
That's the crux of it, is that's the only way in my mind that would make me be like, okay, I understand why they did this. Is if you got him for 5 million or less, because I do think 5 million. I don't think you're trying to sweetheart him into 3 million. I think 5
Mm-mm.
million or less, right? Somewhere in that vein. You give him all the resources he needs as far as assistant coaches pool, auxiliary staff pool, and NIL, as much as you possibly can. I do think that if you did hire him, the NIL budget might grow because people would be excited about that.
Yeah.
I do think he is a name that brings you excitement just because of what he did here. I do think you'll have a lot other big donors pull out, though. I really do,
Yeah.
because there are some big donors who just do not like him. So I think that's a risk you have to weigh as well too. At the end of the day, if he ends up becoming the coach, he'll have my full support. I just think there are a lot more other options you should explore before you go there.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. I think the sell is that he can recruit, he can develop, and I think he knows what it takes to win. Again, I think in the context of where it's at, if he would meet you in the middle, I think it would be worth looking at a little bit farther down the list. Um, but let's talk about who else would be on that list before we run you guys too long here. So we put a lot of work into our hot boards. It's a bye week. We're going to go through just some of the names that, if Mike Norvell did get fired at the end of the year, what are some names? We'll make it quick here. That Florida State, I think we think should look at, right?
Mhm.
And I will at least start with my not number one. I'm going to start with number two because I don't think he's realistic anymore. And I think my number two option was Lane Kiffin, right? I
Mm.
think this was a swing big option if you were going to go to try and make a splash. The problem is, I don't think you can fire Mike Norvell and swing big at the same time. Now, I don't know what the checkbook looks like, but if there's questions of whether you can truly afford to fire him, and I at least want to say this too, everyone gave our administration credit to Ira for saying this. Of War Chant. Like, everyone gave our administration flack for suing the ACC. Y'all look stupid and all this stuff. They
Yeah.
had a plan and they made it work,
Yep.
and they came out on top. So I'm pretty sure they have a plan for this too. They
Yeah.
just want to make sure they get all their ducks in a row. But I don't think with the finances, that I don't think with all the $400 million stadium rent or facility upgrades and everything that you're going to have to pay, I don't think you can fire Mike and swing big.
No.
So I think you have to keep that in mind. And right now, you're talking about, what'd you tell me before the show? Lane was like, the rumor was like 12 point something
Yeah.
million.
Yeah. Almost $13 million is the rumor that Florida has secretly offered him.
You can't do that. You just can't.
No.
You ain't got it like that. And so,
Nope.
like, to me, Lane was my number two option because, he went to the Saban rehab clinic. He has coached in really big games. He does have that presence that you would bring against two big personalities in the state of Florida already. He's been good in the portal. He's only had one losing season in 14 years, and that was at FAU. I've said from the get-go, no, he's not been the greatest at high school recruiting. But I also think when you get him out of Mississippi and put him in a state like Florida, because he wasn't too bad at USC recruiting wise, I don't want him anywhere near Florida. So
Mm.
I hope he stays there. Like, if he goes there, I'm going to be a little bit worried about that, because again, when you talk about, the percentages that we did on the coaches' names that were unnamed, his was better than all of them. And
Yeah.
so I definitely think that Lane Kiffin should have been one of your top two options. I just don't think he's on the board anymore because of what Florida's offering. You just ain't got enough to spend to
Yeah.
outbid them for him.
Yeah. 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 Listen, I think with Lane is this conundrum of, you don't want Florida to have him, but you can't afford to get him.
Yeah.
He's in on my hot board. I broke my hot board into realistically, and by realistically, I meant they could be in the range of 4 to 7 million a year. Then I have too expensive, which is in the 8 to 12 million, and then I just have make them say no people. And Lane is my number one in the 8 to 12 million. Obviously, he's supposedly being offered a 13 million per year contract. I just think he's too expensive for you right now. If you could get him in that 7 million range, then yeah, maybe, but there's no way. There's no
There's
way
no
Florida
way.
State can get him that. And so I think it's hard because man, you don't want Florida to have him, because if Florida gets him, he is the reincarnation of a younger version of Steve Spurrier. That's gonna just
Right.
jolt you and just make you so mad with what he says about you. But also, he has electric offenses. Now, his defenses haven't been very good. And that's to be debated. But he's going to be really good as far as getting good offenses. He's gonna dominate the portal. High school recruiting hasn't been that great at Ole Miss, but again, he did succeed out at USC, one of the talent-rich states in the country. As far as recruiting wise, he didn't do too bad. So you'd imagine that he wouldn't do too bad at Florida as well too. But that's just one of those conundrums that you're like, I wish Alabama would come open, because he'd take that one before he'd take Florida.
I know. And I think I saw something about Ole Miss was offering him over 11 a year. So again, he's just off the list either way, right? And so if you want to talk about like the unrealistic ones that you could go through, that maybe you just call and make them say no, I think you have Saban, Lanning, and Cignetti, right? Yep. Those are your top three.
I'd add Urban in there too.
And Urban on there. I have him on my list too. I think you call them, you make them say no, but you ain't got the money to get them to come out of the woods. Or retirement, or to leave their school, or whatever they're doing.
Right.
I just don't think that would happen. Urban would probably be the only one that you would have a chance at, because he works for Fox Sports right now, right? The rest, I don't think so. So I think that takes me back to, if I'm operating in the vein of, I think Florida State needs that steady the ship, get us back to where we need to be. Maybe you don't win a national championship, but maybe you get us in the playoffs type of guy. I think your number one choice is James Franklin. 53 years old still, so he's not super old, but he's not young either. He's still got a lot of tenure left. By far, he's the most experienced and proven coach you could probably get for maybe not crazy money besides Jimbo. And I think that part does matter. I will say the thing about Jimbo is, if he wants to be here, I think that does matter. I think it matters to have a coach who truly wants to be at your school. For James Franklin, I also like that he's coached in the Big Ten and the SEC for future realignment purposes. Like, he knows those two conferences. He's coached in those two conferences. If he were good enough to stay here for a long-term time, if you were to go to the Big Ten and the SEC, he knows what it takes to compete in those conferences. So I think that also means something too. I think he has a chip on his shoulder from being fired maybe prematurely by Penn State. One of the biggest things, he's available immediately. You don't have to wait to the end of the season, so you could get him immediately. So, like, say you give Mike the vote of confidence, but then you fire him after Wake if they lose. James Franklin, you can go hire right now. You don't have to wait for someone to come open. And I will say this, I have changed a little bit of my perspective on how soon you need to hire a coach, right? I will say, I think you want them as soon as possible to start building for next year. But Michael, what if you were going to get a coach and he was like, all right, you got to wait for me to get through the playoffs?
Right.
Okay, I'll wait on that. That tells you that we're getting a good one. And so I also say, with the available immediately, I think you could lock him up early before more big jobs open. So then you're going to get outbid for him too. Auburn is one example of a big job that could come open. LSU is another big job that could come open, that once they get in the ring, you're out of that because you don't have the money that they have. And then you get I think really you give him an early head start by being immediately available, and he's a low risk hire. I think that's the big thing. Only 2 losing seasons in 15 years. One of those was the first season at Vandy, and one was the COVID season at Penn State. Both of those I can forgive given the situation. Vandy had only made 4 bowl games in school history, and he led them to 3 straight. The guy's a good, daggone good coach. I mean, even at Penn State, 6 10-win seasons. He had 1 Big Ten title, 5 New Year's Six bowls, not counting the CFP. He had 1 CFP appearance, had 2 playoff wins. I know he was awful, 4-21 against top 10, 15-30 against top 25, but he also produced 56 NFL draft picks in the past 10 cycles. Florida State has done 33. And 10 of those came in 1 year in 2024 after the 23 season. So, man, again, and how many of those for Penn State were probably high school developed recruits versus transfers? So, man, again, he has shown that he can be an almost elite evaluator and developer of talent, right? He's made pretty consistently good hires at DC too. So, man, I definitely think, and also you put him in the ACC, he doesn't have Ohio State in the conference with him, right? You just don't have that. But I think this is the problem with Franklin, is it's a high floor, questionable ceiling hire, and we're trying to compete for national championships. So I do think he could put you in that position. Again, we talked about this before. 10-year average recruiting rank 13th. He's had 3 top 10 classes, so he's recruited better. but not significantly better than Mike. But he has recruited better. Again, man, I think 5, 6 years of 10 wins and competing for the playoffs, that don't sound too bad right now.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, for sure. Listen, being able to win games, win 10 games, have a top 10 recruiting classes, those are all really great. I think I just don't think you can look at this hire as, and I get it. You're trying to flesh the hire through a 5-year, pay the buyout, then see where you're at kind of thing. I get that. But man, if we want to be a serious program, you can't look at the hire in that way, in my mind. Like, you have to look at, can we hire the guy who's going to win us a national championship, right? And right now, James Franklin is not that guy. I'm not against hiring James Franklin. If you hire James Franklin, I'll be excited because that means we'll win games, right? But we also can't forget the fact that he did go in this season and he was favored by 20 points and lost both those games, right? We can't forget the fact that he's like 20 something against
4-21.
4-21 against top 10
top
teams.
10,
yeah, top 10 teams. Like, we can't forget the fact that he's lost every single rivalry game he's played. And so imagine winning 10 games every year at Florida State, but losing to Miami, losing to Florida, losing to Clemson. Like, at some point, we're going to get tired of that, just as Penn State did as well too. So, like, I think you have to think about, not can he get us through this 5-year time period with Mike's buyout. Can he win us a national title? That's the coach you've got to go try to win and get. Can this coordinator, can we bring this coordinator, and can they get us to a national championship? Like, that's what you have to be thinking about. And again, I'm not saying I'm against James Franklin. I'm just saying, I don't know.
No, what you're saying makes sense. And I will also say your rivals aren't Ohio State, right? At least not right now. Now, who knows what Miami in a few years, but also the other thing I would say to that is, when you say he hasn't proven to be the guy that can win you a national title, well, who are you going to hire that is? But then I'm not saying he's the guy either. I just think he would be one that could come in and get this program back to where it needs to be in a 5 to 6 year window. And then if it's not good enough, then you can move on too, right? And I understand you have to keep that national championship mentality. You also can't miss on this hire. Like, there is that in the back of the room that has to be considered. If you miss on this, you're screwed. Because you probably can't fire the next guy for 5 to 6 years. Some other names I have would be Alex Golish at USF. Obviously, he did coach at Tennessee as the OC, which he did help them go from 3-9 to 7-6 and 11-2 before he took that job. USF was 4-29 from 2020 to 2022. He got them to 7-6 in year one, beat Syracuse 45-0 in the bowl game, and they're currently 6-1, ranked 19th in the country. So, their only losses to Miami on the road. Probably going to finish with 9 to 10 win teams. He's also had the number 1 class in the AAC. I know that's different, but he's also had the number 1 class in the AAC in 24, number 2 in 25, and currently number 1 in 26. So he shows that he can recruit within his means, right? Also, already has ties to Florida. $2.5 million salary, $3 million buyout. Very much affordable. The big risk is he hasn't been a head coach for long, and he hasn't been a head coach at the Power 4 level. Only 1.5 seasons as a head coach. So that would be my drawback with Golish. But I also think he is should be probably your top 6-ish options, because he's already in the state. He already has the ties, and he's already proven that he can win. And I just kind of like he's got a little bit of swag about him. You know what I mean? This ain't the same USF and all this stuff. I think you need that when you're going against some of the people in the state. So that's my name. I don't know if you have any thoughts on him, and you can throw out another name as well.
Yeah, no, I think Alex Golish is definitely someone you can consider as a part of the search there. He is a name that's been hot for a while. Obviously what he did against Florida, which is what it is, and what he did against Boise State at the beginning of the year as well. They're 6-1 right now, right? And so I do think he's a viable candidate. He is on my list as well. He's down there. I think another name that you can consider, if you want to go the Kurt Signetti route, is Bob Chesney. He's the head coach at James Madison, and the only reason I would say him is that he should be considered is because Sig took all their best players and went to Indiana, and obviously had a great season and went to the playoffs, right? And this dude kept winning, and he's winning again. And so I think that's where I I think that's an option. And here's the thing: he's only making $550,000 at James Madison. So
That's
you could,
insane.
yeah, so you could literally bring him in that 3 million to 4 million range, and that would be a significant pay bump for him. And all that money you're saving by not paying him 5 to 8, $12 million, guess where that money's going,
Yeah.
right? So that's why I think he should be a viable candidate. He's 14-5 right now. He's proven that he can win at that level when he doesn't have his best players. And so is he another Kurt Signetti? I don't know, but I'm just saying he should at least be looked at.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I just worry about kind of taking a risk of a non-power four head
Yep. Yeah,
coach.
I get that. Yep.
That I do worry, but man, 550,000, that's insane. You pay your coordinators 4 times that. That's
Exactly.
insanely low. Another name that I'll throw out here is John Sumrall, the head coach at
Yep.
Tulane. I know we both have him on our list. I really like him, man. Took Troy from 5 wins to 12 in year 1, 2-time Sun Belt champ, 2022 Sun Belt Coach of the Year, had Power 4 offers last year, but signed a long-term deal with Tulane. I could not find anything on his buyout, but I'm sure it wouldn't be that crazy. I will also say he's a defensive-minded head coach, which I
Yep.
kind of want
We
in the
haven't
next
had.
head coach,
Yep.
right? I mean, you see Kirby, you see Saban, you see Lanning. A lot of the successful head coaches are defensive-minded guys. He's only 43 years old, number 2 class in the AAC this year. No Power 4 head coach experience. I think this is a guy who could be a real fit. He's already got, some connections in the South. I think your biggest problem here is he's a Kentucky alum, and that job may be coming open, and I'm sure he would want to go back home. But man, I think that's a good option as well if you did go the G5 route.
Yeah, I know the G5 route is scary for Florida State fans, and I get it. I totally understand. This might be a coach that I would actually consider from a G5 route. He's 38-10 right now. Okay.
Yeah, he's
The
good.
dude can win. And Jesse, in 2023, the reason why you couldn't find a buyout clause is because he doesn't have one. In his new contract long-term extension, they took it out. So literally, this dude can walk scot-free. Florida State wouldn't have to owe
Love it.
Tulane anything if they hired this guy. I know that based on the rumors that we've seen online and everything, that if the Kentucky job comes open, he played there, he's from there. That's going to be a hard one. He's going there. But if the Auburn job comes open, that's the job he really wants. So we would be competing against the job he really wants versus the job that will tug at his heartstring, right, to Florida State. And so that's kind of the issue there. But he is on my list as well.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I think you got to at least make the call and see. And I mean, Duke paid what, $4 million for his quarterback, and then he just went and beat Duke.
Exactly.
So it was nice to see. Hey, man, he's got more ACC wins this year than Mike Norvell does. So, and he plays in the AAC. I think that the next name that I have here, and obviously we'll move faster through the candidates now, but I also have Rhett Lashley here. A head coach at SMU, 42 years old. He is out of the Gus Malzahn tree, so I don't know if you want to go back down that road, because so is Mike Norvell. Auburn OC from 2013 to 2016, Miami OC from 2020 to 2021, SMU head coach 2022 to present. He has been 7-6, 11-3, won the AAC 11-3, made the ACC championship game, and now he's 5-2, I think, or 6-2. So man, I mean, he's done a lot of really good things there. He's fifth ranked recruiting class last year in the AAC. And then, man, he's had 17th, 6th, and 5th in the ACC. So maybe a little bit not the greatest recruiter that's in the actual conference, but it's also SMU.
That's
the
right.
only thing that I think that would give you some trouble there is SMU has dumped a significant amount of money into that football program. And I'm sure if they want to keep him, they would make him an offer that might put him out of your range. But I definitely think that's one that you have to make the call on.
Yeah, he's 34-14. He's my number 1 candidate on my board, my realistic board. He's 34-14. He's only currently making $2.4 million a season right now.
That's insane.
Yes. Now, again, like you said, SMU could come in and dump a whole bunch of money towards him. But right now he's at 2.4 million. I think you can get him in that 4 to 7 million range. I think if he has the recruiting hotbed of Florida State, I think he can recruit.
Yeah.
And yes, he might be out of the Gus Malzahn tree, but his offenses look so much better than what Florida State was running when Gus wasn't here and what Florida State's running now. So I would have a lot. He is my number 1 candidate right now.
Yeah, and I would also say too with Lashley is he was pretty good at Miami too.
Yeah.
And then also you look at SMU, they're not getting TV payment for a while, like in the ACC. So there's only so much money. I mean, I know they raised over $100 million for that program whenever they first made the jump to the ACC,
Right.
but I would question how long that money is compared to
Right.
Florida State if you really wanted to get him. If he was only making 2.5 a year, I mean, I think he understands. No disrespect to SMU because they
No,
blew our doors off
they
last
sure
time, but
did.
you look at the sizes of that stadium, the attendance that they have, the budget that they have, and things like that, man. Again, I think it comes back to like something you heard Tony White talk about when he took the job at Florida State is you come to a place like this and you go, look, that's a place that I can win it all. And I think Lashley probably knows that, even Mike can fall backwards into 13
Right.
wins in an
Right.
ACC championship. And he's not done anything since. So I think if you have a guy who looks and says, man, where do I feel like I can realistically win a national championship between SMU and Florida State? It's hands down Florida
Yeah.
State, and so I think that's the attraction of getting him away from there.
And the other thing too is real quick is that SMU is a private university, so their contract. The only way I was able to find the contract was because I went through a thing, but what it didn't list was his buyout. But speculation is his buyout is pretty significant. I don't know what significant means when you had $2.4 million a year, but they're saying it's pretty significant.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the numbers do have to come into play when you're talking
Right.
about as much as it's going to cost to get rid of the current staff
Right.
that you have. The next name that I've heard a lot of talk about was Clark Lee at Vandy. Obviously, he's doing great things there. He was the Notre Dame DC from 2018 to 2020, so he has coached previously at the Power 5 level as a coordinator. Look, man, he took Vandy from they were a 3-18 run, 0-9 in 2020, and they're currently 6-1 and ranked in the top 10. It has been absolutely amazing. I mean, they have beat Alabama. They just whooped LSU. The only thing that I draw back against this is I understand it's Vandy, right? Now, James Franklin did some winning there too. It was a long time ago, and they fell off since. But they did go 2-10 twice in his 4 years there. And so that makes me nervous because you have that floor again, right? And I understand Vandy has been the doormat of the SEC forever, but my holdback on Clark Lee is how much of his success is purely Diego Pavia, because you had a couple 2-10 seasons before he got there, and he is just unreal at quarterback for them. And so that's right, man. So like you bring back the Norvell thing. He's 7-23 or 7-22 without Jordan Travis. Do you want to take that risk again? Which is why you can kind of cross off another name here is and the other thing I will say with him is Vandy has his only sample set and his only success is with Pavia. So we haven't seen that outside of that, which is also why I'll go ahead and give you a 2-for-1 special here with Brent Key. I worry about Brent Key being mostly Haynes King. Haynes King is a freaking warrior, man. He will get carted off the field after the game. The man is just a big part of their success. And so I think he's won 7 games a couple times. They're 7-0 now, so they're doing great, and they have more pieces than just Haynes King. I'm not saying that they don't, but I would almost feel like I would be willing to go off on these 2 hires if I could see them for 1 more year without that particular quarterback. Now, it goes to say that you got that quarterback and you did what you did with him, but let me see what you would do without it, because I don't want to end up in another Mike Norvell, Jordan Travis situation where all your success came under one quarterback. You gave him a big extension, made this hire, and then they can't win without him. That for those 2, that's what makes me nervous.
Yeah. No, I totally understand that with Clark Lee. He's had success at Vandy. I mean, he's winning at Vandy. James Franklin, had a little bit of success before he got the Penn State job. And so you look at that and you're like, wow, man, to win at Vandy is huge. But again, a lot of that is predicated on, Diego Pavia. Let's see Clark Lee without Diego Pavia, because I would hate for us to get into another, Mike Norvell at Memphis. Remember, everybody can win at Memphis, apparently, right? But then when he got here, then it was, obviously without Jordan Travis, he's 7-20, whatever it is. So before you give Clark Lee a chance to come to Florida State, let's see what he does without Diego Pavia.
Oh, for sure. And, shout out to my guy, Bobby Steiner he is the Josh Storms of Vanderbilt. So I played football with him in high school and all that. Man, I'll take him at least. He's got them boys pushing people around. So shout out to you, Bobby. I know he's a Vanderbilt guy, so he ain't watching this show, but that would be pretty cool, right? Maybe I could get some inside access if he came over. Another name that I know we both have is Dan Mullen. Man, this is a kind of an out of left field name. Currently at UNLV, 6-1. I think his only loss was to Memphis or something like that, or a really good team. He was 34-15 at Florida, 109-62 at Mississippi State. I think Florida fired him prematurely. 3 losing seasons in 14 years, 3 10-win seasons, good offense, knows Florida, has coached in big games. He's weird. I will give him that. He's a weird dude.
Mhm.
And he's not the best recruiter because he does try, he's not. It was so weird at Florida, man, because they would lose a game and he would go to the press conference and be like, well, we scored 30 points. I can't help that like, you're responsible for all of it, dude. What are you doing? So I think he would need to be committed to recruiting and he would need a good DC. But it's a name that, when you're talking about it, man, he did some pretty decent stuff. The only bad season he had at Florida was the third one. And I don't even think it was that terrible. I mean, it wasn't good, but he had 2 10-win seasons before that. Now he's got UNLV winning. He's a name that I think should at least be in the hat.
Yeah. I agree. He's on my list. He's 109 and 62. The guy has won at a Power 4 level in the SEC. He knows how to do it. I think he could be attractive. I think the thing that hurts him is that he coached at the University of Florida. I don't know if we don't have histories of hiring University of Florida. I take that back. Randy Shannon coached at University of Florida as
and Miami.
So yeah, I guess we will. But also,
head coach is different though.
Head coach is different. But also, if I remember correctly, when you talk about being weird, wasn't him who had the wife that would be kissing the players
on the
in
mouth,
the lip?
Just weird.
I don't know if I want to see that at Florida State.
Yeah, no, I don't need all that. That might lead to another Jimbo situation with his wife and all that. We don't need all that. Now let's kind of keep it moving with a couple of names here. I will say, I don't think Florida State is in a position to take a chance on a coordinator. But if you did, because again, you're talking about that high upside that you might possibly get. Signetti was a coordinator guy. Kirby Smart was a coordinator. Dan Lanning was a coordinator. Right. A lot of these successful guys were coordinators before they were coaches without going straight into the coaching, without taking that leap. And so I know we both have one of these on our same list, but I think my number one right now, if I had to go coordinator route, is Glenn Schumann, DC at Georgia. 35 years old. He makes $2 million a year, so financially he's obtainable. He was a GA at Bama under Saban, director of football ops at Bama in 2014 and 2015, a position coach at UGA since 2016. He was the co-DC from 2019 to 2023, when they won 2 titles. That was with Dan Lanning. DC from 24 to 25. Kirby's first. They said he was the first guy that Kirby wanted when he got to UGA. He does not have any head coaching experience, which makes me nervous. But, Michael, he has an elite coaching tree. And to me, that means something, right? I know people always say, unless it's from the Saban tree, don't even hear about it. This is why I would like to see what he could do, man, because he has an elite coaching tree. He's recruited the South very successfully there at Georgia. So I think that's also something to consider. And I also think one thing about him is a good possibility for assistants, right? You could poach a couple of coaches from Georgia, from some of these other programs that he has connections with. So, man, Glenn Schumann to me is one of my top coordinator names that I would look at. And a lot of that is just because, man, you coached under Saban, you coached under Kirby, you coached with Dan Lanning, you have coached with all the best coaches in college football. And I think your tree really does mean something.
Yeah, he's been at Georgia he was a co-DC. He was a linebacker coach starting in 2016, and then he was co-DC in 2019, and then he became full DC. Yeah, and full DC. Okay, so he's been there since 2016. Let me just go back and just tell you Georgia's record since 2016. 8-5, Kirby Smart. 13-2, 11-2, 12-2, 8-2 the COVID season, 14-1, 15-0, 13-1, 11-3, and now 6-1. And I would say that their the defense is not the same. It doesn't have the same bite as it did in prior seasons as this year. But in those years, since 2016, they've won 2 national championships. They've only ever, except for the first year when they went to the Liberty Bowl, they've only ever been in the what were those bowls called before the playoffs?
The New Year's Six.
The New Year's Six bowls. They've only ever been in those types of bowls since that first year.
And they lost in a national championship game when, to Bama.
I forgot about that. So they've played in 3 national championship games and won 2 of them. Okay. This would be my number 1 coordinator hire. Number 1. Quickly. Like, go get him now.
I think I would be willing to take a chance on him as your next head coach if you had to gamble. I just really think, man, the tree, the success, the knowing how to run a program like Kirby Smart runs his program. that's a name that's got to be near the top of the list.
And as long as he went and got like a really good offensive coordinator, like,
yeah.
man, gosh.
Yeah, I'm sure Georgia would give you Mike Bobo. Georgia fans would. I don't think we want him, but they would. Everything's Mike Bobo's fault. The other coordinator name I have here is Brian Hartline, and I know he's both on our list, man. Only 38 years old, $2 million salary, probably not a huge buyout there as a coordinator. The thing I have with him is his coaching career has been entirely at Ohio State, but they are one of the best programs in the country. OC in 23, co-OC in 24, OC in 25, produced 4 first-round picks at wide receiver so far, soon to be 5 with Jeremiah Smith. He is the number 1 recruiter on this list, probably. Like, so that is where he comes in. But the thing that I have is no head coach experience, first year as the real play caller, his only soul there. To me, he's a high risk, high reward type of guy. And the other thing that I pull back on him is he has never really been in the South. Now, I know he recruits Florida very well. He steals all the daggone talent out of here. But he's also doing it to come to Ohio State. So that's the only thing that I worry about with him is the no experience, and he's not really been in the South a whole lot because he's only recruiting one position, right? Now you got to recruit all of them. But, man, I think this is a guy that another one of those, man, where he's got national championship experience. He knows what it looks like to build a national championship program under Ryan Day. And so I think he's another name that has to be on the list.
Yeah, listen, he's my second coordinator behind Glenn Schumann. Like, I mean, the guy just can recruit. And what you need in a head coach in this day and age is you need a dynamic recruiter. You need a guy, if he can convince a high schooler to come play for him, then you darn sure he can convince a couple multi-million-dollar people to drop some money, some bags, right? And he knows how to build a program because he was at Ohio State. He's seen it from firsthand, right? You can go get a good offensive coordinator. You can go get a great defensive coordinator who can do all the X's and O's stuff. You just got to be able to motivate. You got to be able to recruit, and you got to be able to build a program. And he would be somebody I'd be willing to give a shot to do that at Florida State, especially since he only makes $2 million. You could bring him in at that $4 to $7 million range, $4 to $5 million range, and now you're cooking because you got extra money to use for the thing. So that's where I feel about him.
Yeah, the only thing I would say that could be a potential negative there is you also don't have the NIL budget that Ohio State does to be able to do that recruiting. But true. Maybe it gets some things there, some more dollars to open up. Now let's go through some names real quick that I think are unlikely but worth mentioning. We already talked about Brent Key. Again, he's at his alma mater. That's going to be tough. I'd like to see what he does outside of Haynes King, but he does only make $4.15 billion. So we'll see. I mean, I think that would be obtainable. I also think he's going to be a really hot name once more jobs open up. Jeff Brom at Louisville, I think, is a really top name that you would have to look at there. He is a Louisville alum, so it's going to be a tough pull. He already makes $6 million a year there, so I think this is kind of unrealistic, but he's been successful there, 10-4, 9-4, and 5-1 there. He went 30-10 at Western Kentucky, 36-34 at Purdue, so wasn't great. He's not a great recruiter, and he's kind of a jerk. I've interviewed him a few times at Louisville. He's not a friendly guy. But I just think it's unlikely being he's making $6 million a year already at the school that he was an alum at. So, that part's hard. Manny Diaz is a name that we've heard as well. He is an FSU guy, 34-22 at Miami. Wasn't great there, 9-4 in year 1 at Duke. Took over for Elko, so it was a better Duke than you've seen, 4-3 in year 2. Love the guy. Don't think I want him as a coach, if I'm being honest. I mean, I love Manny Diaz. I love talking to him at ACC Media Days, man. He is great. I just don't think that's the hire you want to go with. He'd have to get a good offense. I will at least say this. The defense was never the problem at Miami. It was good at Penn State. Matt Campbell, another name that's been mentioned at Iowa State. I'm good on that. This is another guy that he has coached, recruited, born, raised, all that stuff in the South. I mean, in the North. He has never been. I think that's what I meant to say about Brian Hartline. That applies to Matt Campbell. So erase that part. But man, I mean, he's done some good things at Iowa State, but he's never really been in the South. And they went 4-8 2 years ago in the 7th year into his tenure there. So to me, I just don't think that's it. But that's it, man. The only other names I would say is Dion. Everyone wants to throw that name out there. No, that's an immediate no for me. Honestly, I don't think you take a chance on Dion because I don't know how much longer he's going to be able to coach from his health issues, really.
That's right.
John Gruden is a name that I've heard as well. Look, man, I love the motivator that he is, and I love the X's and O's talk. But he's never coached in college. You don't know what he can do as a recruiter. I think that's a risk you can't take right now. And then Chris Winkie is the last name that I'm going to throw out here. And I don't hate the name, but I just don't love it either. He's had like one season as assistant or like assistant head coach or something like that.
Yeah.
I just don't think that's something you can take a chance on right now. But if you gave him some good coordinators, he does care about Florida State. He would want to be here. You could probably get him for really cheap. I think that's an option too, man. But, give me anybody else that you have out here, and then we'll wrap this one up because I think that's most of the names that we've heard people talking about.
Yeah, I think a name that, I haven't heard a lot talked about, and I wish I'd heard more, is Joe Brady, who is the OC for the Buffalo Bills, but also was the OC for LSU in 2019 when they won the title. I think that's an opportunity there. That's another young coordinator who's had NFL experience. Obviously, he knows how to build or he's seen, NFL at the highest level with Josh Allen. I think he's a pretty good recruiter. So I'd love to see that potential there. And then, this is one that I think because of its attachment to Mike Norvell, people might stay away from. But you cannot ignore what Kenny Dillingham has done at Arizona State. He has went in there and took that program that was bad, and he had him in the playoffs, and he's had them winning. And they went and they upset who they beat this past weekend. They beat I can't remember. They upset somebody this past weekend that they were not expected to win, and they won that game. And so you can't ignore what Kenny has done. Now, Arizona State is his alma mater, I believe.
Yep. And I will say with Kenny, like, you can say one thing about the alma mater for all these coaches. There are very few that truly love their alma mater like Kenny Dillingham does.
So that might be a hard thing, Noel, and the attachment to Mike Norvell might be a hard sell. But I just think that if you get to that point in your list, you have to talk to Kenny. You have to at least reach out and try, because I mean, the man has done what a lot of deemed impossible at Arizona State. You had him in the playoffs, and really, absent a bad call by the referee against in overtime against Texas, he's probably in the semifinal. So like there's that too as well.
Yeah, the hard part, I just looked it up. He does make a base salary of $5.8 million and can earn performance bonuses up to $7.4 million. So it'd be expensive to get him away from Arizona State, I do believe, because he loves that school. And so at the end of the day, man, we just kind of wanted to go through and we wanted to talk about some of the names that we've heard. We wanted to do the fun debate on Jimbo Fisher. I know this episode ran about 3 times as long as it was supposed to. So yeah, man, we just wanted to get that out for you guys and just kind of have some fun talk. It's the bye week. There's no football to talk about. Thank goodness. And so that's going to pretty much be it, man. Again, it could be any one of the scenarios that we mentioned. It could be Mike Norvell comes back for 2026 and we get a prove-it year to see how he does. At least then you're out from under some money. A lot of those coordinators we're talking about had 2-year contracts. So at least by then that might be cheaper too. There could be the situation where they fire him at the end of the year after they restructure some things, and then you're looking for a new coach. And these are the names that we've heard. These are the names that we like. And so we just kind of wanted to go through that. Obviously, we think Jimbo is way down that list, but a lot of that has to do with if you get backed into a financial corner and your only option is Jimbo, I think that's worth looking at if he gives you that sweetheart contract. And so with that being said, guys, we're going to end it here. If you hate us for bringing up Jimbo's name, just look, man, just let us know in the comments who you would rather have. We're sorry. We just wanted to have the fun conversation because it's been burning up social media. Everyone either wants Jimbo back or wants him somewhere else. I heard that he has he sold all his ranches and he only has one in South Georgia. Yeah. So man, I think he's eyeing Mike. I think he might be, paying some teams to beat Mike. He might be funding NIL or something to help Mike lose that job, because I know he wants it for real. But yeah, guys, drop a like and subscribe if you enjoy this content. And then we'll be back into our normal flow next week, previewing the Wake Forest game for you guys. Drop a like and subscribe if you enjoy it. Rate and review on the podcast helps us reach other Noel fans. If you'd like to join as a member, you can do that for $4.99 a month. We get a little cut after YouTube takes theirs. Just helps things go here on the channel. So we greatly appreciate having you guys. We've got a couple of new members that I want to say thank you to as well. And part of that is doing the things that we want to do. We are still going to have a tailgate for the NC State game. I just want to let you guys know that that is coming up in November. We've already planned it. We're going to be doing it bigger than ever, right? It might be even funner than watching the game. But if you're going to be in Raleigh for that game, make sure you check it out. That'll be a fun time as well. So we appreciate you guys. And as always, we'll catch you on the next one. Drop your hot board in the comments if you're watching on YouTube. I'll be interested to see how you guys feel on it. And we will catch you on the next one. As always,
Go
go
Noles.
Noles.